You know, when I was a young man, we didn't need to take drugs to have a good time. Youngsters these days are out of control, because they're all drugged up to the eyeballs.
What do you mean by drugs?
Everything from smoking pot to injecting heroin. These things are illegal for a reason. They destroy lives and communities.
And why do you think that is the case?
Because they're addictive, harmful to health, and make people do crazy things.
So why isn't alcohol illegal as well?
Alcohol isn't a drug. It's a drink. Used sensibly, it can even be good for you.
But there are lots of people who are alcoholics, and many more who do crazy things under its influence. Huge numbers of people do not use it sensibly, and huge numbers die as a result.
Yes, that's true. But people need to have some fun, and we already have alcohol. Just because alcohol is legal, that isn't a reason to legalize drugs.
Yes, people have always used some sort of intoxicant, and alcohol is a good example of what happens if you make a drug illegal.
What do you mean?
During the US prohibition of alcohol, people still drank it, despite its illegality. In fact, during Prohibition, in New York, there were more illegal speakeasy bars than the combined number of restaurants, nightclubs and bars that there are today. Added to that, without regulation, people were more likely to drink substandard products that could contain dangerous adulterants, such as methylated spirit. But, probably the most damaging effect was the opportunity Prohibition gave to organized criminals.
So Prohibition had the complete opposite effect than that which the authorities intended.
Not entirely, no. Alcoholism and alcohol-related crime did in fact reduce under Prohibition. But, only at first. As it became apparent that the law was unenforceable, these problems started to return. It would be logical to presume that they would have reached pre-Prohibition levels eventually. In short, Prohibition did not work, and the illegality of drugs today does not work for the same reasons.
If that's so, then why are drugs illegal then? They wouldn't be illegal if there wasn't a good reason for it.
That is a good question. And many doctors, police officers and lawyers ask the same thing. Not all drugs became illegal at the same time, and often the reasons why vary. Some, such as heroin, became illegal because it was considered a dangerous influence brought in by immigrants. Cocaine became illegal because it was recognized to be harmful to health. With cannabis, its prohibition was largely due to misinformation about its perceived effects on the user and the wider society.
But if keeping drugs illegal creates organized crime, creates adulterated drugs, and doesn't stop people taking them, then why do they keep them illegal?
As I said, that is a good question that there are several possible answers to. The biggest reason is public opinion. For decades, the developed world has had an official war on drugs. This has involved a constant stream of information to convince people that illegality is a good idea. Any politician that advocated legalizing drugs would stand little chance of getting elected unless this perception changes. Drugs alter consciousness, and most people are not comfortable with that, unless the drug used is alcohol.
You said there are several reasons. What are the others?
Well, this is where things get more controversial. Drugs are big money. It is estimated that in London alone, over 100,000 people sell them. The illegal drugs market is one of the world's largest industries. Even though it is a black market, it is still a huge part of any country's economy. Governments could legalize and tax these markets, but also the illegality serves other purposes for them.
What do you mean, other purposes?
For a start, drugs bring money into the system through production and distribution, even though they are not considered part of it. And although they are not taxed, government can make money from them through fines, seizing of assets, and through privatized jail systems. On top of this, governments have been known to be complicit in drug trafficking in order to fund clandestine operations. For instance, under the Ronald Reagan administration, cocaine trafficking was used to fund Nicaraguan contras, who were opposed to the elected left-wing Sandinista government, and heroin trafficking was used to pay for the Afghan mujahideen, fighting the Russians in Afghanistan. Afghan heroin production has risen since the fall of the Taliban.
Okay. But they do talk about legalizing some drugs. My nephew smokes that marijuana, and he says it's completely harmless. He showed me a video that says it even cures cancer.
So many people now smoke cannabis that it has become accepted as benign by much of the population. But it is probably not harmless. There are studies that show it having a protective effect against and a remission effect on cancer, as well as being of benefit in many other chronic diseases. But there are also studies that show it aggravates mental health problems, and that it probably contributes to lung cancer. It is by no means a harmless wonder herb, but it is far less dangerous than alcohol, tobacco, caffeine, aspartame, monosodium glutamate, and many more food additives, and it is also less dangerous than many prescribed medicines. Nobody has ever died from a cannabis overdose.
So if it's accepted, and it's not that dangerous, why isn't it legal?
Probably because it's so easy to grow it yourself. This makes it hard to tax effectively. But people are lazy, and most would probably still buy it from licensed sellers or government shops anyway. Some corporations have already started copywriting logos and brand names in preparation for its legalization. It's probably only a matter of time before it is made legal.
So what about hard drugs? Are they not that dangerous either?
Well, hard drugs is a broad term that can mean many things. There is not much logic as to what are considered hard drugs and what are not. Chemical stimulants, such as cocaine, speed, and methamphetamine, all have a serious effect on physical health and will cause you harm. Street heroin containing adulterants is also physically harmful, whereas pure heroin is less so, leaves the body quickly, and causes little or no lasting damage. But like chemical stimulants, it is still highly addictive. The main danger is overdose. Heroin overdose often occurs because the user buys a batch that is more pure than they were expecting. Despite their dangers, these drugs kill far less users than people think they do.
What about things like LSD though? A friend at university once took it, and he thought my record player was evil, so he smashed it up.
What was playing on your record player at the time?
It was some military marches. I thought they were quite rousing. They had cannon shot sounds for extra effect.
Psychedelic drugs, such as LSD, mescaline, and psilocybin, are not physically dangerous to your body at all. But they can have serious effects on mental health. Flashbacks can occur also, but are actually quite rare. These drugs heighten your sensory awareness, increase awareness of your surroundings, and in stronger doses, thoughts can become physically real to the user, in the form of hallucinations. Setting and mood is very important regarding how pleasant the experience will be. Many people have bad experiences because they are in a crowded place when they take the drug, or with people they don't know, or the environment seems threatening in some way. For instance, your friend found the music on your record player disturbing, and so reacted by destroying it. There are also some studies that seem to show psychedelic drugs can actually increase your intelligence.
So, you think it makes sense to legalize all drugs then? I'm still not convinced.
Well, firstly let me remind you that alcohol and nicotine are as dangerous to health as heroin or cocaine. And also bear in mind that peanuts kill more people than ecstasy, and cannabis and psychedelics have never killed anyone from their direct effects. Huge numbers of people take drugs despite them being illegal. Then, consider the vast amount of negative effects caused by the prohibition of drugs.
What are the negative effects then?
As far as the user is concerned, there are adulterants, such as ground glass in marijuana and cleaning powders in cocaine and heroin. And there is the risk of being fined or imprisoned. In fact, there is some evidence to suggest that being arrested, or even just the fear of being arrested, whilst under the influence of a psychedelic drug, can be so traumatic, it actually causes mental health problems. As well as that, buying one drug will bring you into contact with other types. Plus, the official education about drugs is largely designed to stop you from taking them, is often erroneous, and does not tell you how to take them safely. For someone in prison, or in a job that requires random drugs testing, harder drugs leave your system more quickly, and so are often the drug of choice for those trying to avoid detection.
What about the negative effects for wider society?
Organized crime is out of control because of the drugs trade. An expensive and erratic supply means users resort to crime to pay for addictions. Diseases are spread through intravenous drug use. Huge amounts of resources are used by the police and justice system trying to control drug use, as well as the cost of the avoidable social and medical problems that result from this unregulated industry. In short, legalization would put a stop to nearly all organized crime, generate tax revenue, make the streets safer, and the drug user healthier.
You know what? I think you're right. Making drug taking a criminal matter is probably the stupidest idea in history. It's utter madness. Would you care for a glass of brandy?